Okay, so we got some really interesting material from you about Meditox. That's the South Korean company, right?
Yeah.
Big in the domestic Botox scene.
That's the one. And yeah, specifically, there was this ESG column looking at the company, its CEO. Some pretty compelling points raised.
Exactly. And that's what we want to dig into today. Not just, skim the headlines, but really understand the issues from this material.
Right. We're talking the legal stuff Meditox has been facing, their whole ESG picture, especially the G, the governance side.
Yeah, governance seems key here.
And what it all means, really, for Meditox, for people invested in it, for everyone involved.
And the thing that just jumps right out is this situation with the CEO, Young Hyun-ho. He got acquitted in that trial about illegal manufacturing. But, and this is the twist, the company itself found guilty. And a top exec, too.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head-scratcher, especially now with everyone talking about ESG, about corporate responsibility.
Okay, so let's unpack that legal side first.
Yeah.
What did the court actually say about the CEO?
Well, according to the column, the trial in February found Young Hyun-ho not guilty. The reason given, essentially, not enough solid proof.
No direct evidence that he was involved or, gave the order for the illegal stuff.
That seems to be the gist of it, based on the material, lack of evidence for direct instruction or involvement.
But, as the column rightly flags, being found not guilty in court isn't quite the same as getting a clean bill of health, ethically speaking, right?
Absolutely not. That's a crucial distinction. Legal innocence on a specific charge versus, broader responsibility as a leader, they're different things.
And the company did get penalized.
It did. There was a fine mentioned, though the exact amount wasn't specified in the source. And maybe more significantly, the head of production, he was actually convicted.
Convicted and got prison time, right?
Prison time, yes. So the organization itself and a key person running production are held responsible. But the person at the very top, legally cleared in this instance.
It really does echo other situations, doesn't it? The column mentioned Samsung Electronics Service and their union issues.
And Volkswagen's Dieselgate.
Right. Cases where it seemed like the top bosses were somewhat insulated, legally anyway, while others further down the chain took the hit. Yeah. Makes you wonder about accountability.
It really does. It raises big questions about how responsibility flows or doesn't flow in big companies, and that ties straight into ESG.
Yeah, let's talk ESG, specifically the G governance. For anyone maybe less familiar.
Sure. So ESG looks at environmental impact, social responsibility, and governance. Governance is all about how a company is run. Leadership, pay, audits, internal controls.
And ethics, legal compliance. Very relevant here.
Exactly. Super relevant. Things like how ethical the leadership is. Are they following the law?
So with all this legal drama swirling around Meditox, involving leadership or the court saying lack of involvement, it's probably no shock their ESG score took a hit.
Not surprising at all. The Korea ESG Standards Institute, they're a local rating agency. They actually downgraded Meditox.
How badly?
Their governance rating went from a B down to a C, and their overall ESG score slipped too, from B+ down to B.
Okay, B to C on governance, B+ to B overall. And the reason cited was?
The column explicitly points to the ongoing lawsuits and what it calls judicial risks. Basically, the legal uncertainty and findings were the direct cause.
Now, maybe a letter grade change doesn't sound like a huge deal to everyone, but Meditox is listed on COSAQ, right?
Yep, South Korea's equivalent of the NASDQ, especially for tech and biotech. And Meditox is a pretty big player in their pharma biotech sector, top 20, top 30 sort of range.
So for a company like that, this downgrade is significant. It can definitely spook investors.
Oh, absolutely. Investors increasingly rely on these ESG ratings. It signals risk. It can affect the stock price, the company's overall value, investor confidence. It shows how legal issues and reputation are just, tightly linked.
Yeah, even with the CEO's acquittal, the whole situation signals potential weaknesses, maybe in their internal checks or their ethical culture, which is core governance stuff.
Precisely. Which brings us to another really interesting point the column raised, Meditox's EHS report.
The Environment, Health, and Safety Report. Usually where companies are supposed to be transparent about. Well, environment, health, and safety,
right.
Especially critical in pharma.
Right. And the 2024 report from Meditox, according to the material you shared, it did talk about some positive things, carbon reduction efforts, biodiversity conservation.
ISO certifications, too, I think.
Yes, various ISO certifications were mentioned. So looking just at that, you might think, okay, they seem focused on EHS.
But there's a but, isn't there?
A pretty big one. The column highlights what wasn't in the report. Absolutely no mention of these major ethical and legal issues.
So nothing about the head of production going to prison?
Yeah.
Nothing about using dodgy raw materials or claims of faking test results?
Not a word, apparently. Which, I mean, these aren't small details you'd just forget to include in a report that's supposed to reassure people.
Wow, okay.
And the column makes a fair point. Look, companies often put their best foot forward in these reports. We know that. They highlight the good stuff.
Sure, that's standard PR to some extent.
But omitting issues of this magnitude, that feels different. It raises serious questions about how transparent they're really being, about the report's credibility.
It's quite the contradiction, isn't it? They're boasting about safety certifications and internal controls.
Well, those same controls apparently didn't catch or stop these major violations that led to convictions and fines.
Yeah, the column suggested the language might be polished, but the reality underneath seems less impressive.
It really gets to the heart of a challenge with ESG reporting generally. Is it just box ticking and positive spin, or is it a genuine, comprehensive picture, warts and all? Stakeholders need the full story, including the risks.
And speaking of the full story, this all has implications for their future plans, right? Meditox wants to expand globally.
That's what they've stated, yeah. Big ambitions for the global market, but the column sort of questions that.
How can you push for global expansion effectively if you've got these cracks, as the column put it, these unresolved ethical and legal issues back home?
Especially in pharma. Trust and transparency are paramount globally. Regulators, partners, customers, they need confidence. These past problems could really undermine that.
It definitely casts a shadow on their growth strategy. Investors, shareholders, the public, they must be watching closely.
You'd think so. Watching how Meditox and specifically CEO Ho handle these ongoing legal issues and risks, their next steps could be crucial for perceptions about the company's long-term health. Sustainability in the broadest sense.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap the main tension here. You've got the CEO legally acquitted,
While the company and a top manager are found guilty of serious wrongdoing.
which directly triggers an ESG downgrade, hitting their governance score.
And then raises flags about their EHS reporting, which seems to conveniently omit all the bad news.
It leaves us with some big questions, doesn't it? And maybe ones for our listeners to think about, too.
Definitely. Like, what does responsible leadership even mean if legal outcomes can be so detached from apparent organizational failings? Do legal loopholes mean ethical escape hatches?
Yeah, and how should we, as investors or just informed citizens, treat these glossy ESG reports? What signals should we look for? What does an omission tell us?
Are we looking beyond the check marks and the nice environmental initiatives to see if the foundations, the governance, the ethics are actually solid?
Exactly. And perhaps the final thought, tying back to Meditox's global dreams, how critical is it, really, for any company with international ambitions to genuinely tackle its past problems head on? Can you build that global trust without addressing the skeletons in the closet?
It's a fundamental question, I think. Is cleaning up past messes essential for building future success on the world stage? Something definitely worth pondering.